Chung sat in a corner while the cursed brush asked if he had given up, reminding him that once he made that choice, resurrection would be impossible. It inquired again if he had decided to quit, but Chung ignored it. Meanwhile, a forum thread about dark jokes gained popularity online for its inherent cruelty, designed to play with people's minds, leading players into division and isolation, sometimes even inciting them to kill one another. It was as if a little demon lurked behind the portal, watching its toys, the players, as they approached the dungeon. Realizing this, Chung couldn't help but laugh at his own foolishness for thinking this was a second chance at life, calling himself stupid. He glanced at the cursed brush and noticed it seemed anxious. Turning away, he told himself that it was none of his business. However, the cursed brush called out to him, warning him to be careful. Chung looked back, smiling, but pondered what the brush was really trying to convey. At that moment, Chung noticed an old man with a white beard floating nearby. He observed that the heads in the room bobbed around as if in zero gravity, drifting after impacts and explosions before eventually settling down. Curious, he wondered why the heads floated on their own. He stood up and described the scene, likening the floating heads to stirring water with a stick, creating ripples that moved leaves on the surface. He lightly tossed one of the heads with his finger, suddenly recalling something about a stick stirring water and the paintings he had seen, which caused him to freeze. Chung realized that speculation was a poor substitute for action. He looked up, gauging the approximate position from before, and repositioned himself, determined to try again. He threw a head toward the cursed brush, who was distracted, hoping something would happen if his guess was correct. The cursed brush, unaware of the approaching head, was startled when it hit him. Annoyed, he yelled, asking what Chung was doing. Chung feigned innocence, asking if he had done something wrong. The cursed brush, realizing he couldn't let Chung keep messing around without figuring things out, feigned calmness. He asked if Chung had given up, claiming it would be much better that way. Noticing the oddity in the brush's demeanor, Chung asked why it was speaking so nicely to him. This made the cursed brush break into a cold sweat as he insisted he had always been kind, suggesting that Chung simply wait until time was up. Chung smiled, having already found his answer. The carvings and murals on the walls were key clues to the trial, and he knew that if he missed another crucial part, the puzzle would become unsolvable. Initially, he thought the trial was merely an extra layer of protection placed by King Yama to safeguard his body. While he couldn't read the words on the walls, he could feel the message they conveyed. The final words in the text hinted that this trial was meant for a specific individual, and if King Yama truly wanted to prevent anyone from finding his head, he could have set a death trap instead of placing the real head in the room. The true answer was always positioned above and behind the puzzle solver, shifting as the solver changed direction. As Chung walked around the room, he felt confident about where the answer lay, knowing there was one last step to take. The cursed brush observed Chung closely, noticing something strange about his actions. Chung approached King Yama's corpse, pondering how he would retrieve the head that was fixed behind him, questioning if the mythological King Yama resembled this figure. He thought that climbing up would be too crude a solution and recalled the phrase, "Broaden your perspective." Chung began to analyze the situation, pondering who the Old One mentioned in the text could be, as the final step of the puzzle clearly related to that figure. Meanwhile, the cursed brush, feeling annoyed, questioned why Chung was still moving, given that he had supposedly given up and that the trial was no longer his concern. Suddenly, Chung fixed his gaze on the cursed brush, startling it. He realized that there was something the enemy would never do, showing proper etiquette. He then approached King Yama's corpse, prompting the cursed brush to ask where he was going this time. Chung decided to perform the proper etiquette, hoping it would yield results. He paid his respects to King Yama's corpse, believing that this method might help him retrieve the head. When nothing happened initially, Chung noticed the red head he had seen earlier perched atop the corpse. Refusing to lose hope, he recalled that King Yama was the ruler of the underworld and thought he should perform a kowtow. He quickly executed the deep, respectful bow, touching his forehead to the ground. As he completed the kowtow, a sudden, immense light erupted from the top of the corpse, indicating that his performance had succeeded. It turned out that King Yama's head was already on his body, radiating a powerful aura. Despite not knowing who had set this trial for him, Chung recognized that he needed this opportunity to be reborn. A notification then appeared, congratulating Chung on completing the trial and confirming that the Mang Pup had taken effect. After obtaining the potion, Chung respawned outside the Hell Gate, a smile spreading across his face as he joyfully celebrated his success, feeling the magic flowing through him and realizing that his sickness was gone. The system screen informed him that the trial had been completed, that he had fulfilled his promise, and that he had obtained the agreed-upon item. His new profession was now listed as an Inter of the Underworld. Curious about this title, Chung wondered if it might be a hidden profession. Suddenly, the cursed brush transformed into a gigantic monster with sharp teeth, looming menacingly behind him. Unaware of its rage, it threatened to eat him alive. Feeling something was off, Chung teased the cursed brush, asking if it needed to get super mad. However, the brush's mouth opened wide, attempting to consume him. Startled, Chung thought it was just a joke, but panic set in as the brush lunged at him. In a fit of anger, it brutally devoured Chung, causing him to scream. Chung's consciousness struggled to recover after the cursed brush's violent attack, and all he could hear was the brush explaining to King Yama that the trial had been completed and that he hadn't messed around, as he was a senior official in the underworld. The brush felt it was unfair to be in charge of a newcomer and swore it wouldn't happen again. As Chung's eyes slowly opened, he was met with a tall, dark figure. Eventually, his consciousness faded again, revealing that numerous demonic creatures surrounded him. Someone ordered that the judge's pen be retrieved since the selection trial of the kings had concluded, and their plan had been thwarted by 48. With no successor in sight, they decided to place their bets on Chung and see how things would unfold for him. Adventurers are among the wealthiest individuals in the world, their riches recognized globally due to the real risks they take. In this era of adventurers, it's common to see crowds gathered outside portals. On this particular occasion, a large crowd had assembled around one portal, with some people panicking as they inquired about their loved ones who had entered. Friends, parents, wives, and children anxiously searched for their missing relatives, knowing that losing someone to the dungeon was a frequent tragedy. For many, returning home safely was considered the greatest fortune. Suddenly, someone screamed for help, and moments later, a figure burst through the portal, Chung, gasping for air. He gratefully thanked whoever had helped him, only to realize it was the cursed brush, which laughed and welcomed him back. Surprised, Chung quickly punched the cursed brush and tossed it aside. The brush explained that Chung had escaped death's door after a woman found him outside and that some people dressed in black had taken him to the morgue. Understanding why he was in the morgue, Chung felt a pang of sadness at the thought that no one had survived the Reaper's onslaught. He turned to the cursed brush, asking if there had been any survivors. The brush informed him that aside from himself, only 2 others had made it out. It suggested they discuss it later and focus on escaping first, to which Chung agreed. Meanwhile, a staff member in the morgue muttered to himself about being exhausted from receiving multiple injured adventurers from the association. He questioned why he had to make deliveries while pushing a dead body into the room. Chung rushed to the man's side, causing him to stop and order Chung to refrain from running around in a hospital. They locked eyes, and the man asked if Chung knew where he was. The cursed brush urged Chung to keep moving, warning that the man might recognize him as a dead person, which could lead to trouble. Chung, realizing the urgency, held the man up as he began to faint. The cursed brush scolded him for stopping and insisted they keep going. Reluctantly, Chung set the man down, knowing they needed to escape the hospital quickly. Meanwhile, a woman on the phone assured the caller that she would handle the situation, expressing her concern that they hadn't anticipated an accident at a level 5 portal. The chief was rather strict. Behind her, Chung and the cursed brush panicked at the thought of being recognized. Chung scolded the cursed brush for suggesting a certain direction, which caught the woman's attention. She turned around, but all she saw was a crowd of people passing by. Yet, she sensed that someone had been there just moments ago. After a brief time on the busy street, dotted with houses, Chung successfully made his way out of the hospital and returned home. He entered his room and locked the door. Curious, the cursed brush asked if he lived in a place like this. Annoyed, Chung questioned whether the brush was dissatisfied with his home. The cursed brush compared his room to the spaciousness of the underworld, prompting Chung to remark that the housing prices must be quite low there. The brush added that it was free for the dead. Suddenly, Chung lay down on his bed, feeling a wave of relief wash over him after a long, stressful day. The cursed brush then asked where his family was. Chung calmly explained that he had no family and lived alone. The brush accepted this and jokingly speculated about Chung's origins, suggesting he might have popped out of a rock. This comment made Chung feel a bit sad. He then shared that both of his parents were adventurers who went missing when he was young after entering a portal and never returned. Chung was one of those who couldn't find peace, often standing in front of the portal for long stretches. Some people looked at him with pity, while others suggested he might as well clean toilets. As he searched for information on his phone, Chung felt a sense of dissatisfaction, wondering why he couldn't find anything. It had been decades since adventurers first appeared, and rare professions had been recorded, including necromancers, messengers of God, and charioteers. Hidden professions had long since become relics of the past. Chung hesitated, knowing that no profession like his had ever existed. He remembered he had a rare job and considered that maybe he could still find something unique. Yet, he went silent, putting his phone down and questioning whether it was right to continue as an adventurer, especially since he had already died once. The thought of the traitors who had killed him weighed heavily on his mind. He realized that leveling up from level 1 again wouldn't be easy, and the competition among adventurers was fierce. Anger bubbled within him as he gritted his teeth, fearing that a similar fate could befall him again. He thought about what Hexian had done to him and the way low-level adventurers were often exploited. Those people toyed with the lives of others, and this realization made Chung grip the sheets tightly in frustration. He wondered if he would survive. After a moment, Chung sighed, reflecting on how chaotic everything was. Yet, if he didn't continue as an adventurer, he had no idea how he would face the future. Meanwhile, the cursed brush glanced at a broom in the corner, seemingly uninterested. Chung added that ever since his parents disappeared, rumors had surrounded him at school, leading to bullying and making it difficult for him to connect with others. Quickly shaking off those thoughts, Chung sat up and decided to focus on the skill he had obtained. He commanded the system to display his skills, swiping through the air to bring up the information. Chung was puzzled when nothing appeared on the screen, especially since he had seen others display their skills earlier. The cursed brush cursed under its breath and asked how a level 1 adventurer could have skills. Frustrated, Chung exclaimed that everyone else had skills and questioned how a level 1 could even enter a dungeon and level up. The cursed brush reassured him not to worry. To celebrate his rebirth, the system had granted him a gift. Surprised by the mention of a gift, Chung was notified that his mission was to head to the Adventurers Association, with the reward remaining unknown. He asked if it was the same mission board he had encountered before, and the cursed brush suggested they should go check it out. Before long, they arrived at the Adventurers Association. Chung wondered why his mission had directed him there. Upon entering the building, he expressed concern about being seen, but the cursed brush reassured him that no one could see him except for Chung himself. The brush advised him to lower his voice. Chung was anxious about their presence there, prompting the cursed brush to explain that he was giving Chung a tour since he had been around for a while. Chung requested that the brush not run off, and they paused in an area where a man was killing a monster. Chung explained that this was an awakening area, where anyone who killed their first monster would awaken as an adventurer. The cursed brush grimaced at the foul smell in the room. Suddenly, the cursed brush asked if this large building was solely for awakening, to which Chung disagreed, stating that it handled everything related to an adventurer's identity. The brush then sensed a strong magic coming from upstairs and asked about it. Chung explained that it was the magic of countless portals, noting that each branch of the association had public portals for low-level adventurers, especially level 1s, to rank up to level 2. After clearing a dungeon, the association would issue a report based on the adventurer's loot, casualties, and the wounds inflicted on the monsters. If the adventurer performed well, they might catch the eye of a guild and receive an invitation for training. Impressed, the cursed brush remarked on how much Chung knew, jokingly referring to him as a useless level 1. Chung thanked him but playfully threatened to throw the brush away. Just then, a heavily armored man bumped into Chung, causing him to lose his balance. The man, irritated, brushed off his gear and told Chung to be more careful. Chung quickly apologized, but the man glared at him. The cursed brush explained that the man had used a skill to glance at Chung's panel with disdain. As Chung wiped his shirt, the brush asked if he wasn't bothered by the man's terrible attitude. Chung shrugged, explaining that he couldn't do much since he was only level 1. From a distance, the cursed brush noticed that the heavily armored man bowed to someone in a tuxedo. Chung explained that the tuxedo-clad individual could help him enhance his adventurer record. The cursed brush remarked that the man looked very strong. Smirking, it wondered if that was how the world operated. Just then, the system notified Chung again, and he quickly read the message. His eyes widened in surprise as the system informed him of the mission objective. He needed to choose a dungeon at the association, with the reward remaining unknown. Chung sighed in relief, thinking that choosing a dungeon would be easy. The cursed brush advised him to take it step by step and not rush ahead. Stretching his body, Chung reminded himself that he was level 1, so there was no need to hurry. However, as they approached the dungeon, he felt a wave of fear wash over him. The cursed brush asked what he was waiting for, and Chung, now paranoid, questioned why he was the only one entering the dungeon. The cursed brush clarified that he meant to take things step by step. Frustrated, Chung demanded a better explanation. Just then, a notification from the system popped up, informing him that his mission was to clear the dungeon solo. The cursed brush urged him to calm down, saying he couldn't control the mission's content. This only made Chung angrier as he pointed out that dungeons typically required at least a 4-person team to clear, just like the last time. After inquiring, a staff member confirmed that he had applied for a level 3 dungeon and needed to select which dungeon to enter first. He would then be assigned to a team. Once he made his choice, he could go to the prep room to gather any items he thought necessary, with no limit on quantity. He would also receive dungeon information to help him prepare. Chung carefully read through the options, considering the difficulty and monster types. The choices included the extinct volcano's foothill settlement, the Banshee's Lament, the Wind Parade, and the Water Spirit Ruins. The Cursed Brush noticed Chung's hesitation and, irritated, offered to help him choose. It quickly clicked on a selection, prompting Chung to angrily ask what it had done. The Cursed Brush insisted he should thank it. Frustrated, Chung refused, stating he was still deciding. The staff member then informed him that the Water Spirit Ruins had been recorded in his application and suggested he head to the prep room to gather his items. In reality, the Cursed Brush finally agreed to give Chung an extra life-saving skill and told him to check his mission. When Chung looked, the system notified him that his mission involved the brush's 100,000 jokes, with the first task being to slap the brush, and the reward was unknown. Infuriated, Chung choked the brush further as it explained that it wasn't its fault, the mission content was generated by the system. If Chung abandoned the mission, he would lose both the Mang Pup and the life granted by the system. Realizing that giving up could mean his death, Chung released the brush and decided to proceed with the mission. He activated his skill called Hellfire Embers, a remnant flame from the Hellfire Sea that would burn continuously, consuming MP to use. He also activated another skill called Paper Men, which utilized paper figures as a medium to summon 3 souls that transformed into paper figures, creating a confusing effect that made them appear as the user. Cheerfully, Chung recognized that acquiring fake figures with confusing effects alongside a life-saving skill was a stroke of luck for any adventurer. He couldn't believe he had learned such valuable skills, now possessing both Hellfire Embers and Paper Men, along with a few MP recovery potions. Chung gathered some bandages, a few smoke bombs, and other basic items, knowing that while these resources were essential for clearing a dungeon under such extreme conditions, carrying too much would become burdensome. He entered the Water Spirit Ruins dungeon, planning to follow the map to find the correct route while avoiding monsters as much as possible, aiming to complete his mission with minimal combat and expense. As he read the description of the Water Spirit Ruins, he learned it was once the home of water sprites, who had been driven away, leaving behind various aquatic predators and traps. The dungeon's objective, set by the association, was to reach designated beacons within the labyrinth, which would guarantee a successful exit. This made Chung wonder why the ultimate goal involved defeating the dungeon boss. He discovered that many of the association's portals offered significant benefits to adventurers, but once conquered, they disappeared, essentially becoming consumable resources. However, someone had found a loophole. As long as the boss's room remained unopened, the portal entrance wouldn't close, allowing new monsters to appear over time. This method turned the dungeon into a training ground for adventurers, making every portal a sort of training field. The Cursed Brush expressed disappointment at this loophole, calling the adventurers cheaters. Chung, however, remained focused. Before implementing his strategy, he needed to confirm one thing. He prepared his shoes, tightening them securely. After standing up and checking the quality of the water-walking boots, which were crafted from magic-imbued materials, he felt grateful that he was now cured of his magic disease and could wear them without fear. Noticing the boots were functioning properly, Chung's eyes widened with excitement. Unable to contain his joy, he celebrated by running across the water, exclaiming that his magic disease was truly gone. The Cursed Brush, disappointed that Chung hadn't believed him earlier, watched as Chung reveled in his newfound ability. After the brief celebration, Chung geared up, knowing it was time to set off. He observed the map, explaining that the water-filled area was expansive with many ruins that could provide cover. Moving slowly, he speculated that the map was hand-drawn by some staff member from the association. As they followed the map, Chung cautioned the Cursed Brush not to approach a nearby starfish, warning that it would jump up and try to eat him. While exploring, the Cursed Brush spotted a frog with a halo above its head and asked what kind of creature it was, wondering if it might be dead. Chung explained that it was a soul-form frog enchanted with soul magic to serve as a lookout post. He felt relieved that, so far, they hadn't encountered any monsters, and if things went well, he might clear the dungeon unscathed. Suddenly, the system notified him that his solo dungeon exploration mission required him to kill one monster. Infuriated, Chung began to beat the Cursed Brush, accusing it of reporting him again and claiming it must have conspired with the system. The Cursed Brush insisted it wasn't responsible for this and had done nothing to influence the mission. Chung had no choice but to accept the situation while scanning every corner of the area. He remembered the main monsters that inhabited this dungeon when, suddenly, a duck man appeared out of nowhere. From a distance, Chung identified it as a duckman, recalling that records described them as pack creatures. Fortunately for him, this one was all alone. The duckman became startled upon seeing Chung charging toward him and quickly attempted to escape, changing direction as he ran. While chasing the duckman, Chung noticed a whistle hanging from its chest and decided that destroying it should be his first priority. He prepared to cast his skill, Fire Ember, but the cursed brush corrected him, reminding him it was Hellfire Embers and that he needed to say it correctly. Chung hesitated, feeling that his target was too small to hit accurately. The cursed brush advised him to coat his weapon with the Hellfire Embers. Understanding this, Chung summoned his weapon and aimed it at the duckman with determination. As he activated his skill, he successfully created a flame coating. While the duckman continued to flee, Chung launched the flame coating toward him. The attack hit the duckman directly, dealing significant damage and causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Chung approached slowly, sword in hand, marveling at the power of his skill, which didn't extinguish even in water, though it consumed MP as it burned. The cursed brush praised Chung for his choice of weapon, noting that if he had used something else, the duckman might have escaped. The duckman, seeing Chung approach, grew fearful and struggled to stand, but the damage from the skill had incapacitated him. The cursed brush remarked that the duckman was begging for mercy and suggested letting him go. This made Chung reflect on his own past as he observed the duckman feigning tears. In a desperate move, the duckman secretly grabbed the spear he had earlier and attempted to strike Chung. However, Chung noticed the action just in time and swiftly struck the duckman's neck with his sword, sending blood scattering through the air. Chung understood that begging for mercy in a dungeon was futile. The cursed brush feared for Chung's life, but Chung pointed out that he had noticed something crucial. He glanced at the system notification, which revealed that his MP was now only 57 out of 100. Shocked, he realized that just one attack had consumed nearly half of his MP, prompting him to use it more sparingly. He retrieved a potion from his bag and began to drink, knowing he needed to keep his MP full since there might not be opportunities to recharge during battle. The cursed brush suddenly asked why Chung didn't opt for a longsword or a dagger, instead choosing what it called a toothpick. Chung explained that it was a rapier, and since he lacked a weapon he was skilled with, he selected one that was as long and light as possible. Just then, Chung glanced at the system screen and wondered why his mission hadn't been marked as complete yet. The screen had updated, but the counter showed no progress. It turned out the duckman was still alive and capable of using his whistle. Realizing the trouble he was in, Chung quickly turned around, knowing he was in deep trouble. Chung thought he had delivered a fatal blow to the duckman when the system screen changed from 0 to 1, indicating he had indeed killed the monster. However, a swarm of duckmen suddenly appeared in the water, all aiming toward his position. Recognizing the sound of the whistle, Chung knew they would respond quickly. The cursed brush scolded him, saying he shouldn't have attacked so lightly. To Chung's shock, the group of duckmen leaped into the air, catching him off guard. Fear gripped him as he hesitated, unsure whether to fight or flee. Surrounded by the duckmen, he felt trapped with no apparent escape. Just then, a ray of light caught his attention, offering him a glimmer of hope. Encouraging himself, he realized there might be a way out. Determined, he reached for a smoke bomb and successfully pulled the string, causing a thick cloud of smoke to envelop him. The duckmen coughed violently, allowing Chung to seize the opportunity to escape. As the smoke cleared, the duckmen were startled to find that Chung had vanished, and they began searching for him. The cursed brush also wondered where Chung had gone, not realizing he was hidden underwater, swimming away while deactivating his Hellfire Embers skill. The explosion from the smoke bomb had mingled with the fire, creating a distraction, albeit a weak one, that bought him some time. While swimming, Chung compared his speed and underwater vision to that of the duckmen, realizing they surpassed him. If they spotted him, escape would be impossible. Suddenly, he noticed something strange swimming nearby. Unsure if he was imagining things, he remembered that the only monsters in this dungeon were duckmen. To his surprise, he realized the creature approaching him was the cursed brush, which chided him for running away without it. Chung blew bubbles in frustration, struggling to hold his breath. Eventually, he surfaced, splashing water everywhere, which immediately caught the attention of the duckmen. They charged toward him, fully aware of his presence. Weak and gasping for air, Chung felt panic rise within him as the cursed brush exclaimed that they had been spotted. Chung blamed the brush for its earlier actions. Without wasting any time, Chung sprinted away as fast as he could. The cursed brush urged him to turn around and fight, but Chung insisted he had nearly escaped before. Checking the map, he felt disheartened to see only one path ahead. The cursed brush reminded him that he had no choice but to fight, questioning whether he could handle the numbers, as dying would mean he couldn't revive. Chung snapped at the brush to be quiet, if they were surrounded, it would be over. As they ran, he began to climb up some rocks. The curse brush commented on his surprisingly good stamina, wondering if it was a benefit from being a miner. Just then, a duck man appeared behind him, catching Chung off guard and knocking him into the air. Regaining his composure, Chung scanned his surroundings, realizing he was still surrounded by many enemies. A muscular duck man with a bandage over his eye approached, and Chung realized that the earlier explosion had drawn even more of them in, leaving him cornered instead of escaping. Among the group, he noticed one particularly skilled duck man who was drawing his sword, glaring menacingly at him. With little choice left, Chung decided it was time to use his other skill. He activated his Paper Men skill, summoning a paper figure that resembled him. The duck men, confused, charged at the paper figure. Chung narrowly avoided the attack, but in the process, he took damage from the duck man's strike, blood splattering as he reeled from the pain. Wondering why his skill wasn't working as intended, the curse brush explained that he needed to draw eyes on his paper figures. Chung asked how to do that. The cursed brush slimmed down its form and instructed Chung that it would squeeze out some ink for him to use, emphasizing that the eyes didn't need to be perfect, just recognizable. Chung confirmed that this would allow him to imbue the paper figures with his 3 souls, finally understanding the task at hand. Thanks a ton for watching. If you've made it this far, drop a dope in the comments. And hey, why not check out some of the other videos popping up on the screen while we wait for the next chapters? If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.